Talk Radio 600 WBOB welcomes you to Life Radio, where we ask the experts about everything concerning your home, your health, and your happiness. Life Radio is brought to you by Dr. Dwelvin Simmons of the Orange Park Cancer Center. Call 276-2303 for the Orange Park Cancer Center. Now, here's your host, John Vitas.
Good morning and welcome to Life Radio on this beautiful Sunday morning. And I really hate to open up the show telling you guys a story because it's really Thursday evening. Yes, we are pre-recording. Yours truly has to take care of a little bit of business. They're going to send me out in the field this weekend. But rather than make my fabulous listeners have to tune into a rerun, I thought that, hey, let's just go ahead and do a pre-record for you guys. And I think we got a good show in store for you. I guess since I am doing the pre-record, no sense in calling into 854-1320. We won't be here, but I am going to give you a number throughout the show that I do want you to call, because today we're talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure the same goes out to a lot of folks, and that is adoption. You know, it's a big issue. We live in a time now where it seems like many children are having children, and there's a lot of cases where grandparents are having to care for them and so forth, and it's really a shame that there's a lot of children out there that are being raised in homes that maybe they shouldn't be being raised in. And you know, then there's on the other side of the coin, there's women out there or families out there that would love to have a child. And so how can we bring these two together? Well, there's several ways to do it. But one is going to be through an adoption agency, and I've got a very qualified person here with me today, Miss Tracy Riley, and she is with the Adoption Authority, if memory serves. I think that's the name of her outfit over there. And Tracy's got an interesting background. She got a master's degree in social work from the Florida State University. And after having secured a bachelor's degree in social work from Auburn University, Tracy's also well-versed in domestic and international adoptions. She can answer all the questions regarding the home study process and assist you with starting your adoption journey. Before becoming the founder and executive director of the Adoption Authority, Tracy completed numerous home studies and post-placement visits for several agencies throughout Georgia and Florida. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. Tracy is a dedicated professional who's worked with countless families regarding parents' concern, including children with special needs, behavior dynamics, merging families together, and things of that nature. So she knows what she's doing. Tracy, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, John. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, I guess I want to start off with, you know, if someone is thinking about adoption, there's obviously a process that they will have to go through. So could you let's just start from the beginning. Let's just say that I wanted to adopt, or might even want to back up a little bit and say, what are some of the reasons people might want to adopt?
Some of the reasons that people would want to adopt is if they can't have a child biologically. Other people feel that it's their calling in life, or maybe they have a faith-based issue and they want to fulfill a purpose by expanding their family through adoption. The very first question that someone wants to ask themselves is, what type of adoption do they want? Do they want a domestic adoption, which is here in the United States? Do they want an international adoption, which is obviously overseas?
Right.
Do they want to adopt through the Department of Children and Family Services and adopt an older child? So even before a family will begin the process, they have to ask themselves some really tough questions to decide what type of adoption is going to be best for them.
Let's talk a little bit about what some of the requirements are, or actually, you know, this home study process. That's something that I wanted to delve on a little bit. What exactly goes on in the home study process, which I guess is your initial process to begin the whole adoption?
Right. The home study process will be a series of visits with a family to explore their financial situation, their backgrounds on a local, state, and federal background, to observe their mental health, their physical health. We'll talk to references, both family and non-family members. We'll get a thorough background history of them from childhood to the present time. And really we also do an inspection of their home. We're trying to determine if they would be appropriate and suitable as parents.
So is there any discussion of what their financial situation is as well? Is that part of it?
That is part of it. And it's not that any one family has to have a X number of dollars in the bank, but they do have to show that they're able to support themselves financially at that time, and that they would have additional money to support the needs of a child.
So basically, the requirements fall pretty much under age. You obviously don't want someone that's up there in their years, in their senior years, in their 80s or whatever, trying to adopt. And obviously, finances. You don't have to be a millionaire, but you obviously have to be able to support the child and keep the home going, put food in the cabinets and so forth. And obviously, you have to be in good health. You don't want to leave a child with someone who has a chronic illness, I guess you could say.
Right.
Now, we talked a little bit about the finances, and I don't really know, Tracy, how to put this other than bluntly. How much does adoption cost, and could you kind of maybe give us a little breakdown on what some of those fees, where they go and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. Adoption varies. If you're going to adopt through the state system, the Department of Children and Family Services, that's going to be a greatly reduced adoption amount. What we do with the Adoption Authority is private adoption domestically, and that national average is anywhere from $35,000 to $40,000. If you do an international adoption, that pretty much starts around 35 or 40 and goes up closer to $60,000 depending on the country and the number of times that you have to travel there. That total fee is broken into an agency placement fee, a legal fee, home study fees, travel expenses, and in the state of Florida as well as Georgia, where we're also licensed, we are legally allowed to provide for the birth mother's expenses, her living and medical expenses throughout the duration of her pregnancy. So that will depend based on the birth mother. So those fees are also added into that total cost of the adoption.
The Adoption Authority, what do you do? How do you exactly assist the community and so forth? What type of options do you provide for women?
Well, we all know the name Casey Anthony. And when she found out she was pregnant, she wanted to choose adoption for her little Kaylee. And her family said, no, we don't want you to do this. And we all know what ended up happening to Kaylee.
Right. Sad story.
So what we do is we provide these women with options. You don't have to parent a child that you're not physically or mentally or emotionally capable of parenting. And so many times, these young girls, they'll feel like they have to. That means they're a good mom if they choose to parent their child, when really we like to go in and teach them and educate them that they do have choices. And those choices sometimes can mean that the best option for their child and the best way to be a mom to that child is to provide that child with another home.
Right. It's because when all is said and done, what they feel is right or wrong really is kind of by the wayside, in my opinion. What really is the important matter here is what is best for the child, and not what is best for the child right then, but we've got to think about, from all the way up to 18 years old, if you will.
Right. I wish someone had told me when I was having babies that they were going to grow up and keep needing more and more and more. I might have rethought that decision.
Yes, I know what you mean, but the beauty about it all is there are people out there that are doing, what you're doing. You're giving these mothers an option that maybe many moons ago that they wouldn't have had. So, it's a good thing. I mean, a lot of people look at adoption as the sad side of it, but it's like anything else in life. There's good and bad.
Right.
We're talking to Tracy Riley here today, ladies and gentlemen, on Life Radio. We'll be right back after these messages.
Radio 600 WBOB. Now let's return to Life Radio, brought to you by Dr. Dwelvin Simmons of the Orange Park Cancer Center. Call 276-2303. The Orange Park Cancer Center at 276-2303. Here's your host, John Vitas.
And welcome back to Life Radio here on this, well, I would be telling you a story if I said it was a beautiful Sunday, because it's not Sunday yet. We're doing a pre-record today, but like I said earlier at the beginning of the show, I just could not bear to do a rerun. Besides, we're not syndicated, so I don't know if we have any of those anyway in the tank. Hey, getting back to a more serious subject, though, we're talking with Tracy Riley today here on Life Radio, and she is the executive director, I guess if you will, of the Adoption Authority. And you want to go to the website, it's theadoptionauthority.com. Tracy, do you have to put those dashes in that email?
You can, or you don't have to. It comes up either way.
Okay. And I've got an 800 number for you. Is that good?
That's a good one.
You can call her at 800-747-5145. And once again, we're talking adoption today, and you need to make sure with any decision in life that you study all of your options that are available to you. And there's several options that Tracy will go over with us today, and she's going to say one which I can only hope that is not the choice of many women, and that's adoption. I have to admit that I'm a pro-life guy, and so there that is. Tracy, a lot of times this is a crisis situation for a young woman or a girl who becomes pregnant, and sometimes they feel like there's no one they can turn to. And, what are some of the things that you can do to help them through their decision-making process?
Right. Once a young lady finds herself with a crisis pregnancy or an unwanted pregnancy, there is no easy decision that can be made, whether she chooses to parent that child or choose an adoption plan or the alternative, abortion. None of those are easy decisions to make. So what we like to do for women who come to us is we provide counseling on all of their options, although I do have to say we do not advocate for abortion, but we definitely provide information on adoption and parenting. And then once they make the decision to choose adoption, we assist them throughout the duration of the pregnancy, and then even after the pregnancy, we continue to be involved in their lives. We assist them with the things that you and I sometimes take for granted, John. Going to vocational school and bettering themselves through education, maybe getting a job, transportation, housing. A lot of times these young girls don't have the basics in life that they need, and that's why they're choosing adoption, is because they can't care for themselves, let alone another child. So we help them in any way that we can to get them stable and secure as much as possible.
Well, that's a very good point you're making, because let's think about it. Let's talk about it anywhere from the ages, a young woman from the ages of 17 to, even as far up as, say, 23 or 24. Those are some pretty interesting times in a woman's life. And I'm not going to call a child a burden by any means, but, given, having a child at that age, that kind of puts the brakes on a lot of things. And because in my eyes, you're still growing at 20. Heck, I'm still growing at 53. So, so that's another situation that they come up with. Now, Tracy, there are tons and tons of adoption agencies, I'm sure, out there. If I was to choose an adoption agency, what are some of the pertinent questions that I would ask going in?
All right, I'm going to answer that in 1 second, but let me back up for a minute.
Okay, sure.
Just to tell you, our youngest birth mother was 18 and our oldest was 27, and that's just been in the last couple of years that we've been doing this. We've had actually 2 women choose adoption who were married, and their husbands were fully supportive of that plan. So a woman who chooses adoption can be from any walk of life, whether she's married or single, has a low socioeconomic situation, or makes what she considers to be plenty of money, has housing, doesn't have housing. So there is no typical birth mother. It's not just the teenagers who get pregnant, and it's not just single women. So we work with anyone who's choosing that for her child. As far as what agencies, there's a lot of agencies. There's probably thousands across the country. The way that we're different is we're small. There's just a couple of different people that work with me. And so our girls get a lot of one-on-one support. We like to take them to their doctor's appointments and take them grocery shopping and really build relationships with them that can last and be a support system throughout their lives. And I can't speak to what other agencies do, but I know that that's what we do. My very first birth mother from a couple of years ago messaged me today on Facebook, and I saw her right around Christmas. And, that adoption was 2 years ago, and she and I still keep in touch. And I keep up with how she's doing, and she is parenting another child. And so we keep in contact.
Well, it was kind of like I was talking about earlier. I want to kind of get back to that a little bit, and this is kind of a touchy question here, but it's these women. Let's just say the woman who was giving up the child, and it's kind of convinced herself, and you've spoken with her, and you've been through the counseling side and all that, and heard their story and their reasoning, and not that they needed to give you one per se, but you listen to their story. And I guess where this is going is is adoption can be a sad thing on one end, but it's like when one door closes in life, another one opens. What it might be sad, initially, if we think about it on the other side of the coin, this has given this child a chance at a better life.
Absolutely. And there are so many parents out there or couples who have not been able to have a child biologically, and that this is their dream to parent a child. And so while it might be very, very sad for the birth mother, it's also a time of celebration for the adoptive parents, although they both realize it's bittersweet on both sides.
All right. But we are, like I said, it's when all the smoke clears, if you will, it's still a good thing in my eyes. Now, there's obviously going to be situations, Tracy. Have you ever had a mother that was, that wanted to, that was going along with the program, if you will, but then all of a sudden, the day the child is born, things change? Is that very common in your business?
It is common. We have not had that happen because we develop relationships with these girls and we really understand their motivation for choosing adoption. When they get to that point where they've just delivered a baby and it's an emotional experience and there's hormones going and they realize that what they're about to do is permanent, that's when, again, we step in, and because we've built a relationship with her, we can talk to her, remind that girl, here's the reasons you're doing what you're doing, and really just kind of be her support system. Not all the girls that we work with, and I say girls, but women, not all the women that we work with have a support system. We did an adoption back in October in Georgia, and the birth mother was in her early 20s. She was already parenting one child. She became pregnant. The birth father was in New York in prison. And so she wanted to choose adoption. Her family was not supportive at all. And so she chose to, and she felt like it was in her best interest to tell her family that baby had died at the hospital, instead of saying that she had made the choice for adoption, because she just did not have the support from her family.
And that's something that I think family members really need to watch out before they start passing judgment and so forth, because it's, unless they're wanting to adopt it, the parents are, then that really goes back to the woman, and it is her child, it's her body, and that's why a lot of people might say that it's that they're pro-abortion, but at one point, why should we take a life when there's someone out there that is willing to support that life and love and cherish it?
Right. We talk with a lot of women who say, they're considering adoption and they're not really sure, and then all of a sudden, family come from out of the woodwork to go, oh, we'll help you with this baby. We'll do this and we'll do that and we'll be there. And it's happened more and more that a few weeks into it, family members don't want to get up in the middle of the night anymore. They don't want to give more money for diapers. They don't want to help like they promised. And then this girl is stuck calling us going, what can I do? And at that point, we can help her place for adoption, but that's about all we can do, because we don't provide services for the girls who choose to parent.
Is it safe to assume that most people who are wanting to adopt are looking for what would be, I guess, classified as a newborn, and where do we go from newborn to, say, toddler? What are the parameters?
The majority of private adoption is going to be your newborns, your infants. In the last couple of years at the Adoption Authority, we have placed 10 children. 8 of them were newborns right out of the hospital. The other one was 6 months old. The mother had parented for about 6 months and then decided that she wasn't able to continue parenting that child. She already had a toddler. I think he was about 3. The other young lady was 18 at the time, and she had been parenting her daughter for 3 years, which, if you do the math, she delivered at 15 and became pregnant at 14. So for 3 years, she gave it her best shot at parenting. She was also in a foster care system herself, so she was raising her daughter in a transitional living home just west of Jacksonville. And so she was really struggling with how to improve her future while at the same time parenting this 3-year-old. She contacted us for adoption, and we placed that child with a family out on the West Coast. And that young birth mother has went on to go to a 4-year college, and she's working a full-time job and going to college full-time. And her daughter is out on the West Coast. She automatically had an older brother, and they're very bonded, and it was a win-win for everyone.
Okay, that is really what we're looking for in this case, is the win-win for everyone, even though it can be a sad situation. But it's like we said, when one door closes, typically another one will open. And speaking of open, closed, and semi-open, I noticed that there are 3 different adoption types, if you will, where it comes to the birth mother. So could you explain to our listeners a little bit about that? Actually, Tracy, I might have jumped the gun a little bit. There's 3 of them that we need to talk about, and I've only got about a minute. So let's just start off with the first one. If we have to, we'll come back from break.
Yeah, we can do that. Open adoption is exactly that. The birth mother and the adoptive parents share detailed information about one another, and they can contact each other at any point from the pregnancy on through the end of time.
Okay, so they pretty much kind of maintain a relationship, an open relationship.
Absolutely, just like you would your neighbor or your family member down the street. Yep.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail when we come back. You're listening to Life Radio on Talk Radio 600 WBOB. We'll be right back.
Radio 600 WBOB. Now let's return to Life Radio, brought to you by Dr. Dwelvin Simmons of the Orange Park Cancer Center. Call 276-2303. The Orange Park Cancer Center at 276-2303. Here's your host, John Vitas.
Hi, and welcome back to Life Radio here on Talk Radio 600 WBOB. We're so glad you joined us here today. In the studio with me today is Tracy Riley. She's with the Adoption Authority, and you can visit her website at theadoptionauthority.com. I highly urge you to do so. I do my darndest to make sure when I bring in the experts, I've kind of checked them out a little bit and really seen how they are and how they do business. And Tracy is as real as it gets, folks. So if you are looking to adopt, or you're looking to put a child up for adoption, I guess it goes both ways, Tracy, please give her a call. And here's her 800 number. It's 800-747-5145. That's 800-747-5145. And I'd like to remind everybody once again that it's a pre-recorded show today. So normally I'd have you call in if you had questions, but hopefully if yours truly does this job well, we can get the majority of those questions answered here today. Okay, before we left, we were talking about whether or not if a birth mother chooses adoption, what are her options, and there are 3. And before we left, Tracy, you were telling us a little bit about the open. Let's go ahead, because I think I was too close to the break before we really explained that. So can we kind of start from the top on that one?
Absolutely.
What is it?
Open adoption is where the birth parents and the adoptive parents exchange information. They exchange name, phone number, addresses, whatever is their comfort level. They usually meet prior to the delivery of the child, and they spend time together with the child after the adoption based on what's most comfortable for the birth mother. So they know each other. They have the opportunity to get to know each other and build a relationship that can continue until the end of time.
Okay, so do they more or less sit down possibly and kind of let's go ahead and go over what we think the ground rules should be?
Yes.
Like obviously it could be very confusing to the child to,
right,
to see the real mother and so forth. So basically what I'm reading into is on the open side, everything is shared. Obviously there are some ground rules that they would lay down, I guess, beforehand.
Right.
But this is probably a good thing because the birth mother gets to kind of see the growth process, because a lot of people might not understand. People don't give up their children for adoption because they don't want kids. They hate the child or whatever. There's a lot of different reasons. So there are some out there that would like to see the growing process, the school pictures, and that kind of thing. Okay, what's our second one, Tracy? Is it just the opposite?
It is just the opposite. It is a closed adoption, and that is where the birth mother doesn't know anything about the adoptive parents, and the adoptive parents don't know anything about the birth mother other than the basic medical history of her and the birth father. But there's no names exchanged, there's no phone numbers, there's no contact information. And this one is a little more rare because the majority of people want to maintain some type of relationship for the sake of the child. As the child gets older and has questions, where did I come from, and why did my biological mother make this decision, and why didn't she want me, and things like that. So closed adoption is becoming more and more rare as time goes by. It used to be the most common type of adoption, but now it's very rarely used.
Well, I almost wish I had our friend Attorney Sam Gibran in for this next question, but you can give me a vague answer if you want. This is something that I don't know if comes up or not. It wouldn't surprise me if it did. Let's just say that the birth mother recently got divorced, and she is collecting child support for that child, and she gives that child up for adoption. Will the court system allow the child support to go to the adoptive parents, or does everything have to be revisited, or does that take us right back to Sam Gibran, attorney at law?
I think that would take us back to Sam, because if a birth mother is parenting her child and getting child support and she terminates her parental rights, then the father steps in and he has parental rights. So just because mom terminates her rights doesn't mean that dad terminates his rights. So if she were to give the child to the adoptive parents, then I think legally dad can come in and take the child.
Okay. So basically before the adoption goes through, in my opinion, it sounds to me like if there is a divorce here, that both parents have to sign off on this.
Right, absolutely. And like I said, the majority of these adoptions are done as infants. So the birth father has the opportunity. There's a couple of different ways that the attorney handles him. He has the opportunity to sign a consent or relinquishment of his parental rights, or he can be served that there is an adoption plan in place. And then when we don't hear back from him, like a certain amount of time goes by, and then it becomes basically his consent. If we can't find the birth father or we don't know who he is, there's another legal process that we go through. So it's not like you can ever just really have your child taken away from you and you not know about it.
Okay. And I guess that is just one of the things that you take care of through your agency, if you will, because there's, like you said, there's agency fees, there's also legal fees, and you know the process, what steps to take, and try to make the whole process go nice and smooth.
Right. Sure. My legal team does a wonderful job of knowing Florida law and exactly what protocol to follow and how to do that. Real quick, John, we talked about two types of adoption, but we didn't talk about the third type. Okay. And the third type is a semi-open adoption. We have open where everyone knows each other, and we have closed where no one knows each other. We have semi-open where all communication is dealt with through the agency. So if birth mom wants pictures or an update of the baby, then she will contact me. I'll go to the adoptive parents and ask for that information. I will get that from them, and then I will give that to her, so that the birth mother and the adoptive parents don't ever really come in contact before or after the adoption.
When a child is adopted, is it automatic that they go through the name change, or are there cases where they keep the same last name? What's the routine there?
They would never keep the same last name. They would always get the adoptive parent's last name. A lot of times in your semi-open or open adoptions, prior to the child being born, there's an agreed-upon name. Everyone talks together, and I mean, your name is a legacy, and that's something that birth mothers oftentimes will like to give to their children, so that there is something that they gave to them other than life itself. So they'll work together to create a name for the child. Now, at the finalization of the adoption, which takes place a few months after delivery, then the adoptive parents go through the process of possibly changing the child's first and middle names, and definitely changing their last name to match theirs.
All right, next question. Let's talk a little bit about the health care of the adopted child. Obviously, yours truly, as many of my listeners know, I've done my fair share of visits to the emergency room and so forth based on my I think I can ride a motorcycle lifestyle, and which kind of brings this up. One of the first questions that you'll see is, do you have any family history of this? Is there any family history of that? So that is also, I guess, part of your process through the adoption process is to get a little bit of medical background on the the biological parents. Is that
Absolutely,
correct?
yeah. That's a legal requirement here in the state of Florida, and we talk with both the birth mother and the birth father and ask them extensive questions based on their genetic history and anyone in their extended family, and we try to get as much information as possible. There are a lot of times where the birth mother wasn't raised by her mother or was adopted herself, and so we can't always get that information, but we definitely do our best to get as much information as we can to provide that to the adoptive families so that they have that information going forward.
Have you ever had a situation, and I kind of doubt this, but where there was, in lack of a better word, buyer's remorse, where someone took a child, you adopt, you set them all up and everything, and all of a sudden 6 months later they go, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Has that ever happened to you?
I'm sure that's happened for other agencies. That has not happened for us yet.
So far, you're good.
Yeah, and that's good because I maintain legal custody of the child, or the agency maintains legal custody of the child until the adoption's final. So if that were to happen, that means I'd be bringing a baby home, and I don't think my teenagers would like it very much.
Oh, who knows?
I know.
Might take them off the Facebook for a while.
My very first adoption, sweet girl, one of my favorite people still, she had been told through the pregnancy, through her sonograms, that she was having a boy. And so the adoptive family had prepared a nursery for the boy, and they'd picked out a name. And then when the child came, of course, it was a girl. So I remember this young girl, she asked me, she goes, do you think they're still going to want my baby? And I assured her, absolutely. It doesn't matter to them if it's a boy or a girl. They definitely want to adopt this child from you. So it was just so sweet that the her being naive and not knowing for sure that these adoptive parents were going to want the baby just because it was a girl. But I mean, yeah, we haven't had buyer's remorse yet.
Okay. And that was probably not a very good analogy, but it's the best I could do. I mean, I wasn't going to ask about warranty or anything.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's good to know because we do not guarantee the medical health of this child. We don't guarantee any health or lack thereof.
Right. You do what you can in terms of medical background on the parents, but there's only so much you can do.
Just like if you have a biological child, there's no guarantee that it's going to be healthy, even though all the testing throughout the pregnancy showed that it would be healthy. There's never a guarantee.
Okay, we are talking to Tracy Riley. She is with the Adoption Authority here in Jacksonville, and she also operates in Georgia as well, and she's a nonprofit, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we get back. You can visit the website at theadoptionauthority.com, and you can also take this number down for more information from Tracy, and that number is 800-747-5145. You're listening to a pre-recorded edition of Life Radio here on a dark Thursday night. Stay with us, and we will be right back after these messages.
Radio 600 WBOB. Now let's return to Life Radio, brought to you by Dr. Dwelvin Simmons of the Orange Park Cancer Center. Call 276-2303. The Orange Park Cancer Center at 276-2303. Here's your host, John Vitas.
And I would like to take an extra moment here to thank the good folks, Dr. Dwelvin Simmons, and all the good folks over the Orange Park Cancer Center. They're part of an organization called Frog Docs. And no, they don't work on frogs. It stands for the Florida Radiation Oncology Group. They're spread throughout the Florida, Jacksonville area in particular, but they are, I think, even down south. They have an office in Palatka as well. I'm more familiar with the Kingsley office, which is just over there by the Orange Park Hospital. So once again, a big thank you to Dr. Dwelvin Simmons and all the good folks over at the Orange Park Cancer Center. We are in the studio today with Miss Tracy Riley. She's with the Adoption Authority. And I wanted to give everybody their website because very interesting website, very informative. Tracy, by the way, tell your IT guy, good job, because everything I think you need to know is right there on that website. So
I will, but it's a IT girl.
Oh, my
Women
goodness.
power.
There I go again.
Women power.
There's the first strike, John. Okay, and anyway, the website over there is theadoptionauthority.com, and the phone number is 1-800-747-5145. Tracy, tell us a little bit about the agency itself. What motivated you to get it started? How long have you been doing it? How is your support staff and so forth?
That's a great question, John. I actually was raised in the foster care system myself. As a teenager, I didn't have a functional, stable family. So I became involved in the foster care system as a teenager. And so as I got older, I realized that adoption and helping to create stable, functional families was very important to me. So about 4 years ago, I founded this agency in the state of Georgia, and a year later, I expanded it into Florida to help create families, and not just families, but families where a child could be raised in a warm and loving environment and be taken care of and have all of the things that I think every child deserves to have. And so I created this agency a few years ago to assist with adoptive parents and their process to expand families through adoption. And as time went by, word of mouth kicked in. You know how that can be. If you're doing something good, sometimes people are talking about it. And
Right.
and I started having women contact me and needing help and guidance on how to place their child for adoption. And so just through a passion and through kind of a bad childhood myself, I ended up in this journey, and I've loved every minute of it. They say if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So I never feel like I'm getting up going to work. I feel like I'm getting up helping create families and helping people improve their lives all the way around.
Well, I agree with you about the work thing. The only thing I really feel about this is work is the traffic getting here, the traffic going home. But
yeah, this is not the best road.
I'm surrounded by some great people. We've got a great support staff here at WBOB that does come in handy, and always obviously great company like you coming on and good expertise in your division. You know what? I was thinking about something the other day. We do have a mutual friend, attorney Sam Jabron, and from time to time, you've actually gone into the courtroom, I guess, as a child advocate.
Right, absolutely.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I go into the courtroom for adoptions, of course, but I've worked with Sam and other local attorneys here in the Northeast Florida area advocating for children on what is in their best interest. A lot of times parents want to fight over their kids and they want custody as if this child was an object. And
Right.
so I've been into court many, many times after getting to know the family and getting to know the child and learning about him or her and deciding what's really in his or her best interest. I've been into the court to advocate for that child and let the judge know where I think that child is best suited.
So, I guess we've got two people here battling, like you said, and both of them, one is pointing at the other one saying that's not a fit home over there, or that's not a fit mother or father, so you kind of have to go in and clarify that.
Right.
Is this something that's fairly typical in divorce cases?
It can be if the divorced people can't agree on what is in their best interest of the child. So a lot of times I will do that. And that really ties into the adoption agency, because in preparing adoptive parents, I have to, again, go in and assess their home and their marital situation and their financial stability and things like that. So as a licensed clinical social worker, I'm always making assessments on families and giving them ideas and recommendations on how they can improve and helping them to better themselves if they're willing to take my advice.
Tracy, there's some general adoption themes that I kind of wanted to go through in case we've got some listeners out there that are maybe that are considering this, and it's I think I've stuck it over there on page 1 on my notes, and these are questions or things that I guess I want to ask if you agree with this more so than anything else. Is the question of how do I feel about not being genetically related to my child going to affect me any?
That's one of those questions that before you make the decision to adopt, you really need to explore. That's important to some people. To be genetically connected to their child and to look like their child on some level. We don't do a lot of interracial adoptions, especially here in the South,
right,
unfortunately, but being genetically related is very important to some people, and that's why they'll spend their entire journey on in vitro fertilization or some other type of process to where that they can have a biological child. So that's definitely something to be considered before the decision to adopt is made.
And I guess this was something that might occur if the child is maybe a little bit older, but how do adoptive parents help their child understand, about their pre-placement and so forth?
Yeah, that definitely applies to older children, but even as an infant, I think the majority of the families that I work with, in fact, all of them, they start talking to their children even as babies, about adoption and having two mommies and growing in someone else's tummy and things like that. So that adoption is never a scary word or a bad word or anything like that, but that it's as positive an experience as it can be for the child and everyone involved.
What happens if, let's say you've got, I want to go back to your open, closed, and semi-open. If you've got one that's closed, and then we've got the birth parent, let's say, all of a sudden just curiosity is just abound, and they hired a private detective or something, and they went against the contract, if you will, and they contacted the child. Obviously, that would cause, endless emotional problems, right, as much as anything else. Have you ever heard of a case of that?
Well, because it's a legal process, even if a birth mother decided to come forward and try to track down the child, she would have no legal rights to the child. Now, let's say the birth mother comes to me and says, I've changed my mind and I would like to get some information and I would like to know where my child is. Then at that point, I contact the adoptive family and get pictures and updates and things like that and provide that to the birth mother.
Provided they give you permission to do so.
Right, absolutely. Because once that adoption process begins, there is no legal recourse that a birth parent will have to come back and take that baby. I know we all see the horror stories and the Lifetime TV movies where that happens and birth mothers try to come back and get their children, but legally it just doesn't happen unless they were coerced somehow or there was fraud involved. A birth mother cannot change her mind and come back and get custody of that child. In Florida, the minute she signs her name on the dotted line, it's done, final, and there is no recourse that she can use to change her mind.
Right, and I'm sure that she is probably told time and time again before
yes.
she does this is it, this is final, last chance.
Absolutely. Okay. We always have a court reporter in the room who's taking a transcript. Everyone is sworn in, including the birth mother and the hospital staff, who will give information on her last dosage of medication, so that the birth mother can't come back and say, well, I was on heavy duty meds and I didn't know what I was signing. So we take every step, every precaution possible to make sure that we do this legally and in the best interest of the child.
Okay, I've only got a couple minutes, Tracy, and I made a note earlier that you are a 501c3 organization and you do offer your services in the state of Florida. You're licensed, as well as in the state of Georgia. We do have some Georgia listeners out there, so I wanted to put that out there. And once again, I want to remind everybody, it's theadoptionauthority.com. Nice, catchy name, and everything I've learned from you so far, Tracy, you are an authority when it comes to adoption, because you not only do this for a living, you have actually been through this process. So, you probably are more familiar with the emotional side of all this than probably many other people that run agencies that might be similar to yours.
Right, absolutely. Before a child can be excited that someone chose him or her, they have to go through that grief process that someone wasn't able to care for him or her. So as wonderful as adoption is, it is also at the end of a loss situation.
Well, Tracy, I want you to know that I sure appreciate that, you coming in and talking with us today. Apparently the hour has gone by a little bit quicker. I think my production guy must be turning the clock up or something.
It did go by really quick, John.
Too fast. But anyway, I do want to have you back home because I want everybody to know that this is a specialty of yours as well as grief counseling. So there are a lot of things that deal with human life out there that you're very familiar with that can give us a lot of insight on. So I want to thank you for coming on Life Radio today.
I'll be back anytime.
All right, folks, that's another hour of Life Radio. Let's have ourselves a great weekend, and we'll see you next Sunday right here on Talk Radio 600 WBOB.